Somewhere between the Hindu Kush and the Tian Shan, the Silk Road stopped. Nobody told the people who lived there. Tajikistan is the smallest country in Central Asia and the highest. 93% of its territory is mountain. The Silk Road did not go around it. The Silk Road went through it, over it, and in several places did not survive the attempt. It shares borders with Afghanistan, China, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. Its capital was a Monday market until 1924. Its highest mountain reaches 7,495 meters. Its oldest city was founded by Alexander the Great in 329 BC. Its oldest excavated settlement is 5,500 years old and still being dug. Most of the world cannot find it on a map. The names here are older than the countries that claim them. The people are older than the names. We follow the road east. Dushanbe means Monday. Not capital, not fortress, not glory. Monday, the day of the market held here when this was a village in the Varzab River Valley, surrounded by mountains on every side, at the end of a road that went nowhere important. The Soviets needed a capital for their new Tajik Soviet Socialist Republic in 1924. They chose the Monday market town. Population at the time? 6,000. It is 900,000 now. Persian domes face Soviet ministry buildings across streets wide enough for tanks. The bazaar operates 7 days a week. Monday is no longer special. The avenue running south to north is named for a poet who died 1,000 years before the avenue existed. The mountains appear at the end of every street, in every direction, as though the city exists inside a bowl and the bowl keeps tilting inward. The Silk Road ran through this valley. Caravans returning from China stopped here to sell, to rest, to decide whether to continue west or spend the winter. Some of those caravans became permanent. The merchants became the market. The market became the city. Dushanbe is the accumulated decision of people who stopped moving and stayed. The statue of Abu Abdullah Rudaki stands at the center of the avenue that carries his name. He was born around 858 AD in the Sugd Valley, 200 kilometers north of where the statue now stands. He died in 941. He wrote in Dari, Persian, the literary ancestor of modern Tajik, Dari, and Farsi. He is called the father of Persian literature, the first great poet of the Islamic world. His collected works once filled 100 volumes. Fewer than 2,000 lines survive. His country did not exist when he was alive. The Republic of Tajikistan came into existence 983 years after his death. He is on the currency. He is on the avenue. He is on the statue base in bronze, looking south down a boulevard of a capital city he never saw. in a country that built its national identity around the fact that he had lived. The poet as foundation, the culture as the reason for the country, not the result of it. 165 meters. The flagpole at the southern end of Rudaki Avenue was completed in 2011. When it was raised, it was the tallest flagpole on Earth. The flag itself is 40 meters long and 20 meters wide. It weighs 700 kilograms. On a clear day, the flag is visible from 25 kilometers. The flagpole cost $8 million to build in a country where the average monthly wage is around $200. In 2014, Saudi Arabia erected a taller one. Tajikistan did not respond. The pole is still standing. A country of 9 million people, landlocked, mountainous, the poorest in Central Asia by GDP per capita. And for 3 years, it held the tallest flagpole on Earth. A small country's need to be seen is not irrational. It is the oldest political instinct there is. The Soviets built the same logic into their architecture. The Tajiks inherited it and added height. The current gates were built in the 18th century. The site beneath them has been occupied since the Bronze Age. Achaemenid fortification came first, then Kushano-Sasanian, then Timurid, then the Khanate of Bukhara, then Russian imperial administration, then the Soviet Union, then the Republic of Tajikistan, independent since September 9, 1991. "30 kilometers from the capital. The hill rises above the Hisar Valley floor. From the top, the road south toward Afghanistan, the road west toward Uzbekistan, the road north toward Dushanbe. Control this hill, control the junction. The logic has not changed in 3,000 years. Seven governments arrived at it independently. The 18th century gates appear on the 20 somoni banknote, the currency issued after the previous currency collapsed in the 1990s following the Civil War. The gates are 3 centuries old. The hill beneath them is 3 millennia old. The banknote is 25 years old. The country is 32. Everything older than the city is still standing. "5,500 years old. The site sits on a flat plain near the Zarafshan River, 15 kilometers west of Penjikent. A farmer discovered it in 1976 while turning soil. The plow struck mud brick walls that had been underground since the 3rd millennium BC. Archaeologists arrived. Excavation has continued for nearly 50 years. The burial that drew international attention was that of a woman. She was interred with gold ornaments, carnelian beads, lapis lazuli, turquoise, and a silver mirror. The jewelry showed trade connections to the Persian Gulf, the Indus Valley, and the steppe cultures of the Eurasian North. She died around 2200 BC. She is called the Princess of Sadazm. The Silk Road would not exist for another 2,000 years. Before the route had a name, this plain was already a node. Before the caravans, the network. Sadazm did not wait for the Silk Road. The Silk Road grew toward what Sadazm had already been doing for 3 millennia. UNESCO added it to the World Heritage List in 2010. The excavations continue. The plain keeps producing. Penjikent fell in 722 AD. The Arab armies came from the south. The Sogdians, the merchant culture that had dominated Central Asian trade from the 3rd to the 8th centuries, abandoned the city or died in it. The city did not recover. The population left. Sand moved in. The walls came down slowly over centuries, undisturbed. The murals stayed. Excavations beginning in 1946 found painted banquet scenes still holding color after 13 centuries. Reds, deep blues, and ochre yellows. The Sogdians depicted themselves at ease, feasting, hunting, playing music in a city that did not know it was 12 months from ending. A civilization preserved by its own ending. The city died and the art survived, because nobody went back to disturb either one. Alexandria Eshate, the furthest Alexandria. Alexander the Great founded it in 329 BC on the eastern bank of the Syr Darya. At the point where the river bends and the Fergana Valley opens beyond. He had marched his army from Macedonia, 4,600 kilometers east, and this was the limit. The furthest outpost of the Greek world. Beyond this, he determined, was not worth the cost. He built the city, garrisoned it with Macedonian veterans too old or injured to continue east, and turned back. The city did not turn back. 2,353 years of continuous occupation since that garrison. The Syr Darya still bends at the same point. The valley still opens beyond it in the same direction. The city has a population of 180,000, a covered bazaar that has been trading since the 15th century, and a cable car across the river. The name Alexander gave it was eventually replaced by Kujand, then Leninabad under the Soviets. then Kujand again in 1991. The city he founded has outlasted every name placed on it. The name Iskandarkul has held for 2,350 years. Iskander is Alexander in Persian. Kul is lake. Alexander's Lake, named by people who believed he had camped on this shore during his eastern campaign. Local tradition adds that his horse, Bucephalus, died here. Bucephalus died near the Jhelum River in modern Pakistan, 300 kilometers southeast. The tradition relocated the death to this lake because the lake required a story equal to its appearance. At 2,200 meters, the water is turquoise. The surrounding peaks of the Fan Mountains reach 5,000 meters. The lake sits in a cirque carved by a glacier that has mostly retreated. The meltwater filled the bowl over centuries and produced 3.4 square kilometers of still water at altitude, perfectly reflective on calm mornings, perfectly blue in afternoon light. The name has survived Hellenistic, Sogdian, Arab, Timurid, Uzbek Khanate, Russian Imperial, Soviet, and independent Tajik administration. Through every government that has claimed this mountain range, the lake has kept the same name. The empires changed. The water and the name did not. "15 kilometers, 7 lakes, each a different color." The Xing River descends through a narrow canyon in the Fan Mountains and pools 7 times before reaching the valley floor. Each pool sits lower than the last. Each holds a different mineral concentration. The chemistry shifts with altitude, temperature, and the rate at which glacial melt enters each basin. The result is a 15-kilometer chain running from near white at the highest point through turquoise, green, and gray-blue to the color of glacial flour at the lowest pool. No single decision produced this. No engineering. No arrangement. The river found the canyon. The canyon made the pools. The minerals and the altitude did the rest. 7 lakes in 15 kilometers, each demonstrably different from the one before it, for reasons the mountain arranged for no one's convenience. Below the Fan Mountains, 2 roads diverge. One continues west. One goes south toward the Pamirs. We take the south road. The Gunt River meets the Panj River at Horok. The Panj is the border. 20 meters of water, in places less, between Tajikistan and Afghanistan. The opposite bank is visible without aid. Stone houses, terraced fields cut into the slope. A footpath where a road would be on any other side of any other border. No bridge crosses at Horok. The Afghan villages on the far bank have no road connecting them to the Afghan interior. They exist in the geography largely outside the infrastructure of the country they belong to. Horog is the capital of Gorno-Badakhshan Autonomous Oblast. The region covers 64,200 square kilometers, larger than Switzerland, and holds 220,000 people. The population density is 3.4 people per square kilometer. The rest is mountain. The Soviets built a botanical garden here in 1940 at an elevation of 2,200 meters to study which plants could survive the altitude and the cold. The garden still operates. The plants the Soviets chose are still growing. The Soviet Union that planted them is not. The Wakhan Corridor was drawn on a map in 1895. Two empires, British and Russian, had spent most of the 19th century competing for influence across Central Asia. The British called it the Great Game. The Russians called it the Tournament of Shadows. By 1895, their spheres of influence had expanded until only a narrow strip of mountain territory in northeastern Afghanistan remained between them. The Wakhan Strip was formalized as a buffer zone, thin enough that neither empire would risk the diplomatic incident of crossing it. Wide enough to prevent direct contact between Russian Tajikistan and British India. The empires that drew this line are gone. The line remains. This narrow valley was the primary branch of the Silk Road from approximately 200 BC to the 15th century AD. The route that moved silk westward, and Roman glassware, horses, and gold eastward ran through here. Xuanzang, the Chinese Buddhist monk, passed through in 629 AD on his journey to collect scriptures from India. Marco Polo came through in 1271 on his way to the court of Kublai Khan. The corridor was the route specifically because the mountains on every side made every alternative worse. The ocean routes opened in the late 15th century. The Silk Road stopped using the Wakhan. The corridor stayed. The fortress sits at the edge of a cliff at 3,200 meters above sea level. It was built in the 3rd or 4th century to control movement through the Wakhan Valley, the main Silk Road approach from the south. The walls cover 2 hectares. The cliff drops away on 3 sides. The 4th side narrows to a single approach path that an attacking force would have to ascend in single file, announcing themselves for hours before reaching the gate. No army ever came through the Wakhan Valley fast enough to test Yamchun. It held without capture for 1,500 years because the terrain that made it strategically necessary also made it militarily unassailable. Every army that might have needed to take it would have had to cross the same valley that made the fortress useful to begin with. The fortress and the terrain were the same argument. The walls are still standing. The cliff is still there. The valley below, the river, the Afghan mountains beyond. unchanged from what the builders saw when they chose this cliff in the 3rd century and decided it was the right place to hold. The Wakhan ends. The plateau begins. The road does not end. It climbs. The road has a number, M41. It has a length, 1,252 kilometers, from Dushanbe to Osh in Kyrgyzstan. Its highest point sits at 4,655 meters above sea level. The Soviets built it in the 1930s because the Pamirs held mineral deposits and strategic border territory with no way to reach either. They built it along the approximate line the Silk Road had used for centuries to cross the plateau. The same path Marco Polo walked in 1271 on his way east to China. Marco Polo described what he found on the plateau. He wrote that the air was so thin that fire produced no warmth, that food would not cook properly at altitude, that his party's horses and pack animals weakened without apparent cause. He described a cold that fire could not correct, a fatigue that sleep could not fix. He had no word for altitude sickness. The physiology was not yet understood by European medicine. He described the symptoms with complete accuracy and zero understanding of what was causing them. The road crosses the same altitude. The body responds the same way it did in 1271. The plateau is called the Roof of the World. The name is exact. At 4,000 meters, the horizon extends unusually far. The atmosphere above is thin enough that the sky shifts toward a darker blue. The landscape on every side is the same. Gray rock, brown rock, white snow on the peaks to the south, flat plateau to the north. The road is the only human argument the plateau accepts, and even then, it does so without enthusiasm. The road crests at 4,655 meters above sea level. At this altitude, each breath delivers 40% less oxygen than at sea level. The heart compensates by accelerating. The brain compensates by slowing. Altitude headache typically begins around 3,000 meters. Nausea follows around 4,000. At 4,600, the majority of people cannot sleep regardless of exhaustion. The body treats the altitude as an emergency and responds accordingly. Marco Polo wrote that his men could not sleep at the summit. He assumed it was the cold. The Silk Road crossed here. Every caravan moving silk, spice, glassware, and lapis lazuli between Rome and China passed over this point. Every merchant, every diplomat, every letter carrier running dispatches between empires. At 4,655 meters. In summer, if they had the planning. In winter, if they did not. The pass offered no shelter and no alternative. The road went here because the mountains offered no lower option. The pass has a road now, a kilometer marker, a name on a map. None of it helps the body. At 4,600 meters, the body is still in 1271, and it knows. "25 million years ago, a meteorite struck the eastern Pamir Plateau. The impact crater is 52 kilometers wide. Over geological time, the crater filled, glacial melt, snowfall, groundwater seepage, and became a lake at 3,914 meters above sea level. Almost no aquatic vegetation survives this altitude and this cold. Almost no fish. The crater's geology produces a slightly saline water chemistry that most freshwater species do not tolerate. The lake supports what it supports, and nothing more. The lake is dark, steel gray under cloud, deep blue in direct sun, which arrives for limited hours at this latitude and altitude in winter. No vegetation on the crater rim, no trees anywhere in the visible landscape. The crater holds the water. The plateau holds the crater. The sky holds everything else. Karakul people have grazed livestock here for centuries because grazing tolerates conditions agriculture cannot. Thin soil, 6-week growing seasons, -40-degree winters. They did not settle here because it was hospitable. They settled here because no one else would, and they had learned to do what no one else could. Population: approximately 1,200 people. Kyrgyz ethnicity, Tajik passport. Stone buildings solid enough to survive winter, beside yurts used during the months when movement is possible. January temperatures reach -50 degrees Celsius. The wind off the plateau drops the felt temperature lower. The growing season lasts 6 weeks. Fresh water comes from the lake. Fuel comes overland on the M41 when the road is open. The Silk Road caravans stopped here. The lake offered fresh water and some shelter from the plateau wind at the crater rim. The caravans rested, watered their animals, and continued east toward China or west toward Persia. The people who stayed became the people who stay. The plateau does not end. It simply continues until Kyrgyzstan begins. The road holds the horizon like a thread. The lake sits at 3,734 meters. No road reaches it in winter. No settlement exists on its shore. No infrastructure, no jetty, no shelter, no marker indicating human purpose. The surface on a calm day reflects the surrounding plateau exactly. The same gray-brown rock above and below the waterline. The same silence in both directions. There is no color here that was not here before any human arrived, and no color would be missing if the last one left. The Silk Road caravans passed Bulungkul without stopping. There was nothing to trade here. No shelter worth the detour from the main plateau highway. No water source better than what a well-supplied caravan already carried. The lake sat outside human purpose for the entire active period of the Silk Road. 15 centuries of commerce passing within kilometers of a lake that offered nothing commercially useful and was therefore left alone. The road stopped mattering in the 15th century. The lake did not notice. It had not noticed the road when it existed and did not register its absence when it stopped. Whatever Bulungkul is, it is not conditional on the road, or on the people, or on anything the Silk Road carried. It is simply here. It was here before the first caravan. It is here now. Sarez Lake did not exist on February 17, 1911. On February 18th, an earthquake struck the central Pamirs. The shaking triggered a landslide on the slopes above the Murghab River. 567 meters of rock fell across the river valley in minutes and stopped. The Murghab River, dammed, backed up behind the natural barrier. The water rose. The valley upstream flooded. The lake filled over the following 2 decades. The lake is now 61 kilometers long and 505 meters deep. "17 cubic kilometers of water held behind rock that no engineer designed, no government approved, and no independent structural assessment has certified as permanently stable." Scientists have studied the Usoy Dam, the landslide that created it, since the 1960s. The consensus: the dam is not in immediate danger of collapse, but it is not stable in the way that engineered dams are stable. If a sufficient earthquake struck the right location, the dam could fail. Flood modeling indicates the wave would reach the Amu Darya within hours, and the Aral Sea Basin within 72. The downstream population at risk is estimated at 5 million people. The dam is holding. The Silk Road ended not because the terrain defeated it. It ended because Portuguese sailors rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488, and the goods started moving by ship. The road through Tajikistan was not destroyed. It was simply no longer necessary. Khujand is still at the Sir Darya Bend, where Alexander placed his garrison. Sarazm is still being excavated. Penjikent's murals are still holding color. Yamchun is still on its cliff. The Usoy Dam is still holding. In the Yagnob Valley, a few hundred people still speak Sogdian, the language of the merchants who built Penjikent, unchanged in 14 centuries. They came back from Soviet deportation, both times. Somewhere between the Hindu Kush and the Tian Shan, the Silk Road stopped. The people did not. The road is still there, in the ground, in the names, in the people.